Hey, yo, everybody. So we style our amazing page and we are experts on how single boxes behave. There may be a few advanced concepts which we didn't cover, such as collapsing margins, and I will definitely give you links and suggest you research those online, but I will mention them only when we run into them, so don't worry for now. Back to our situation. I know what you're thinking. I promised you a nice page. Well, there is one last thing we have to learn before we're able to build actual pages, but after this, you will be able to build any page in the world, and I'll show you in a second. In real pages, we don't just have one box, we have a lot of boxes. So the next part is going to be the real deal, building pages and layouts with multiple boxes. When you look at web pages and want to start designing web page, and I mean specifically layouting pages, you have to start thinking in boxes. Everything is a box. So we're going to talk about layouting with boxes and then see how we can use it in actual pages. Remember we said that back in the days, we talked about this last time, we had awful stuff like floating tables and designing was a mess. Well, today we're going to do the most basic layouts with the concept of Flex, which is the most commonly used method today. All browsers support it for layouting pages. Basically, it just means we have a flexible container. And I know, whoa, relax. What the hell is flexible? What is Flex? What is a container? I'll explain. But for now, I just want you to get the idea of it, which is extremely simple. And if you got it, you will get everything. We're going to play a very, very simple puzzle game. In this puzzle game, everything in the world is a box, and there are only two very simple things, two very simple rules that we have. One, every box can contain more boxes, another box or two boxes or three boxes or as many boxes as we want, but only in one direction, either in a row or a column. And the second one is they can set their dimensions within the box that contains them, either in percentage or in pixels. And that's it. These are the only two concepts we're going to need, and we're going to build every page in the world with that. So this is our first example. We have a box which has two boxes. On the left, we could look at maybe a navigation bar. We said that we have to have one big box for the world, and you can look at this maybe the body or something. And in our case, we just have two boxes. It can contain one box and two boxes. And you can see how this solves all our problems, right? Since this is just a box which contains two boxes in a row. Remember we said that they can declare what sizes they are. I'm just gonna make the left one say it's a bit smaller and then the second one a bit bigger. And that's it. Placing two boxes inside a box in a row helped us build the first layout we wanted. So let's jump to the second layout, and you already see how we're gonna build this one. I just have two boxes. This time they're going to be in a column. And you can see how with placing two boxes I can achieve the same result. I'm just going to make the top one smaller to be a navbar, and then the bottom one can be bigger. So now that we got the basic concept, let's jump into something a bit more advanced, and this is as advanced as it's going to get. If you can understand how we're going to build the next design, the next layout, you can understand anything. In this example, we have three boxes, and this might be a bit confusing. Since everything we've done so far, it was easy to play by our rules since we could just place stuff in a row or in a column. So let me try and draw this. First of all, you always have the containing square, so I'm just going to draw one. And then I'm going to try and place one at the top like we did last time. But then I need to decide between two squares, which one am I going to place? So I could place one here, but then I'm stuck. I can't place another one on the right since we said boxes could only be placed in a row or in a column. So this is impossible. Well, let me try and break it down. We can do this by two steps. First, let's look at placing our boxes in a column. Following our first rule, I will place a box that fills the entire width. Now I'm just going to focus on this box on the bottom, and I'm going to restart using our other rule of placing boxes in a row. So I'm going to place one box here inside this little box and another one here. And as you can see, we've managed to create the more complex layout of boxes within boxes. So following this, let's jump into a real interesting example. Let's try and take a look at this. Here we have a top navbar, bottom navbar, left navbar, a right kind of thingy, and tons of boxes inside. So let's try and break it down. First, let's draw the page. I'm going to draw it a bit bigger this time so we have lots of room. And then we're going to place 3 boxes in a column. One small one on the top, another big one here, and a small one on the bottom. And that's it. We're done with the first part. I don't have to think about it anymore. Just place, following the rules, boxes in a column. And now let's just look at middle box, and that's it. In this one, I have boxes in a row and 3 ones. I'm going to place one here, one in the middle. Sorry, I'm going to try this a bit bigger. And one on the right. Now, in these 3 boxes, let me take a look at the most left one. And in this one, I can just start placing boxes in a column. And that's it. Now, looking at the middle box, what I see is also 3 boxes in a column. So let me place these. And in each one of these boxes, I see 3 boxes in a row. So now let's look at actual examples. Let's think about this page and see how it layouts. I would argue that when I look at it, I see something like this. It has a full page. And maybe there is a left navbar, which is left page. And then I see 2 top bars, one like this. And then I see 2 parts of the page divided like this. And in this part, there are 4 videos. And on the bottom, you have a title here and containing content on the bottom. So kind of something like this. So now that we have the layout in our head, we can see how we can go about building it with our own cool puzzle game. So we're going to start by having 2 big squares in a row. I'm going to place one here and another one here. And then we're done with phase 1. Now we're going to place another 4 squares in a column. One is going to be this top one, another small one, then 2 large ones. Now, once we're done with this, I'm going to look at the right side, and I'm going to say it has 4 boxes inside of it. Now, each of these squares has 2 squares inside of it. The bottom one is for the text. If you can't see what I mean by doing this. Now, going to the bottom one, I can assume it also has 2 big squares. One is here, the other is here. And now, going to the top part, I'm going to place another 3 squares, and I'm running out of space, but you get the idea. I can basically start building and structuring and layouting any page I choose to. So now that you get this very basic concept, we're going to start doing this with actual HTML and CSS and see how we can start building these cool pages. To actually use everything we've learned, we're going to start layouting using the flex property. I'm just going to delete all my styles. I'm going to call my main div the container, just so we understand. I'm going to delete its content for now. Then I'm going to select it using the CSS selector with the ID container, and I'm going to place the very basic CSS property we talked about using display, and then put flex. All right, now flex, it's not actually just a CSS property. It's kind of a module full of a lot of properties. It aims at providing a more efficient way to lay out, align, and distribute space among items in a container, even when their size is unknown or dynamic, which is very useful on today's web. Just like we talked about, the main idea behind the flex layout is to give the container the ability to alter its items, width or height, to best fill the available space, mostly to accommodate to all kinds of display devices and screen sizes. A flex container, which in our case would be the main div, expands items to fill available free space, or shrinks them to prevent overflow. But most importantly, the Flexbox layout is direction agnostic as opposed to the regular layouts, block, which is vertically based, or inline, which is horizontally based. While those work well for pages, they lack flexibility to support larger or complex applications. We're not going to dwell too much on the terminology and the definitions. I'm just going to show this by example. Let's go back to our CSS. I'm going to place another two divs. One would be ID of box 1, and the other box 2. Now, let me select those. And we're just going to give them some properties. So in the container, I'm going to give it a background color of green, long green, obviously, so we can see it. And I'm going to give it a width and a height so we have something to work with, just so we can see it. Now, in box 1, I'm going to place a special property called flex1, which refers to the flex grow of items. And just to understand this defines the ability for a flex item to grow if necessary. It accepts a unitless value that serves as a proportion. In our case, we just put the number 1. Okay, and it dictates what amount of the variable space inside the flex container the item should take up. And if this is a bit confusing to you, try not to understand this, just understand something basic. If I place here flex2, it means that box 2 would be twice the width of box 1. Okay, and if I put 1 in both of them, they're going to be equal sizes. In most cases in real life application, you're just going to use some with constant width and some which have the flex property. Try not to worry too much if you didn't understand this. Now, just to make sure we can see our boxes, I'm going to give each one of them background colors as well. Everything is light, so light coral. Maybe something magenta. I'm just going to also place some margin on them so we can see the back div. And now if I go back to my page and I refresh it, bam, just like we talked about. We have a container, we have two containers inside of them. The big one contains both one, and they are both aligned in a row, and each one of them takes equal width. Now, where exactly did I say that these guys should be in a row? Well, I didn't, but DisplayFlex automatically sets its direction to a row. So if I did something like flex direction and change this to column, and now I go and refresh, you see they're in a column. So you can start seeing how we can apply everything we've learned to build complex layouts. So on the first example, we said we have a navbar. Just make the container a bit bigger. And this navbar should be around 100 pixels high. So I'm going to change box 1 height to be 100 pixels. And it's not going to be needing flex 1 anymore, since it's not going to be the entire width. On box 2, I'm going to leave flex 1 since I wanted to contain the entire remaining space. And let's go to our page and refresh it. And bam, this is the first layout. Now, let's go to our second layout. And in this case, I'm just going to change the flex direction back to row, because we said the squares need to be one after the other. And if I refresh this, oops, I get confused. Since I didn't give box 1 any width, we now can't see it. It might have a height, but now that it's a left side navigation bar, it needs to contain some width in order for it to appear. So let's just give it a width of 200 pixels. And it doesn't need height anymore, since it needs to contain the entire remaining height. Bam. Now we get the second example. Now let's go to our complex example of having a top navbar and a left navbar. Do you remember how we did it when we drew? We first said that we are placing one box on top and one box on bottom, just like our first try. So I'm going to set this back to column, and I'm going to change box 1 height to be 100 pixel again. And let's just see it works. So we're back to the vertical example. Now we're saying we're just going to look at this pink square on the bottom and add 2 boxes to it. In this case, box 2, while being a flex item and a content of the big container, will also become a container by itself. So we should maybe set the display of it to flex as well. And notice things can be flex items and flex container, which is what our entire puzzle game was based upon. Remember, we said boxes can always contain more boxes and in different directions. In this case, the flex direction is, you guessed it, it's going to be row. Now, in box 2, let's place another 2 boxes called box, and I'm going to call it box 3 and back box 4. And let's start styling those. Box 3 is supposed to be our left side navbar, so we're going to give it some kind of width of maybe 100 pixels. We're going to set its background color to be some kind of color we haven't seen yet. And we'll set box 4, you guessed it, to contain all of the remaining width. And let's give it a background color. And also, let's give some margin so we can see everything. Oops, I wrote box and not idea. I'm not sure why I did that. That's not going to work ever. And now when you refresh the page, you can see that the entire content is just how we looked at it. But in real pages, we don't see all these boxes inside boxes. We just see our layout. And why is that? Here we gave it extra margin just so we can understand what's happening. But if I delete the margin from everything, and I refresh the page, well, you can see it behaves just like we wanted it. And notice we don't see the green anymore or the magenta anymore. Since this one became container, we now have boxes that contain their entire width. Beautiful. We've lost sight of the container and of box 2. We actually just see box 1 and then the containers inside box 2, which is box 3 and box 4. Now, let's continue and build upon this example to bigger examples. So I'm going to add another box. I'm going to call it box 5. But in our case, box 5 is just going to be the rightmost bar. And let's just give it a width of 150 pixels. Let's give it also background color of teal. Go back into our example. We now have a left side navbar, a right navbar, and a middle one. We said that the left navbar should contain many items, so this would be box 3. And let me just give it a class called nav item, so we can start using some more stuff we've learned. And let me just place 6 of those in here. Now remember, if I select something by class, it's going to select all the boxes that have the corresponding class. In this case, these entire list of items would get the same CSS properties. I would like them to be of different size, so I'm going to give each one of them flex 1. And I'm going to give them background color, some kind of maybe orange, just so we can see them. That gives them some small margin of 3 pixels. Maybe. Now, since box 3 became a container, we're going to give the display property of flex, so all the items could behave correctly. And notice that they're in a row because we set by default everything in a row. So let me just give it flex direction and says colon. I'm bad at our puzzle game, but I'm becoming better. And bam, this is like the way we wanted it. Now, going back to our middle div, remember we said we need 3 more containers inside of it. In our case, this would be box 4, and I'm going to span. I'm going to place another 3 divs, and I'm going to call it classes, and I'm going to say square row. And let's talk about square row for a second. They each need to be equal height. And since box 4 now became a container, I'm also going to give it a display property of flex. And this time, I'm going to make sure that the flex direction is correct. They should be in a column. We give this one background color so we can see it. Let's use some green and refresh the page. And bam, I don't see anything. And I'm going to give it some margin as well so we can see that it has 3 rows. And I'm going to refresh. You get the idea. So here it is, applying the same tricks we used for our puzzle game, we can now lay out almost any page in the world that we want. And we're going to do some more complex examples once we're going to build our real page.